Van is obviously a great coach.
Got to do it with supreme focus, right? With razor sharp focus. Breathe what he's breathing.
But he's a better person.
Biggest thing you gave me was time. You didn't really know me. We were from the same neighborhood and area, but I was with a group of guys that wanted to go to college, wanted to play ball, and you actually gave us that reality that, hey, this could actually happen because we saw somebody that was like us and that we wanted to become.
Only thing that matters is you come out here, play after play after play after play, and that's the play we do. That's what matters.
Recruiting is about relationships. It's built on trust. It's built on doing the right things. And it's built on your head coaches and your athletic director, their vision. And I think we have two great leaders, both of those positions. So it makes it easy for me to go out and do what I do.
Be aggressive. Let's win. Here we go.
Feels different to do this podcast with your AD, with your own AD. It just feels different, but it, in a very special way, it feels different. We've had the opportunity to have conference commissioners, head coaches, even a former head coach who is actually going to have an opportunity to coordinate defense this weekend in the Super Bowl has graced our presence on this show. But at this moment, I'm extremely excited to have Kansas State AD, my AD, like T.O. said, my quarterback, but my AD, Gene Taylor, on the show. And I'm really excited to hear from him. And so with that, I'll just jump right in with the first question, Gene. You were at NDSU before Kansas State, and we were together, and that was a great time. But before that, you had a 15-year stint at Navy where you really made your move from an administrative assistant ticket manager, assistant to the athletic director, associate athletic director. Talk about that. How did you make your way up the ladder in that organization?
Well, Van, thanks for having me on. First of all, appreciate it very much. I have seen a couple of your guests, and I'm pretty honored to be on there because you've had some good ones. So thank you. It was a pretty special time for me. I mean, it was the Naval Academy was my first job after I finished my master's. I'd spent some time in the restaurant business after I graduated from Arizona State, and so I walked in there as basically an intern, and through just a lot of really fortunate things, I didn't have to move up in this business. A lot of times, in order to get that next step, you've got to move to a different, institution. And the Naval Academy, believe it or not, was when I got there, it was 1986. It was a little behind the times, and it always been their leadership had always been retired military, and then about 2 years into the deal, we got a new athletic director. His name Jack Lingle, and Jack had been in Missouri and Fresno State, and for whatever reason, I was very fortunate. He took me under his wing, and there were some changes made. I'd had experience in the ticket office at SMU, so he made some changes, elevated me to assistant ticket manager, and then we weren't a big department, and so I realized when I became ticket manager that I was also operating the ticketing side, but I was also setting up events and managing the events. And so I had some opportunities to look at other jobs and went to Jack and said, Jack, help me out here. I can create a position called assistant AD for ticket and operations. And he, I put a job description together and he said, yep, let's go. You can have that. So I was just really fortunate from a timing perspective. And then it grew in, he saw some, potential in me and continue to take me under his wing and give me more experience and more responsibility. And then eventually became associate AD and a senior associate AD. And then ultimately, he realized that it was probably time for me to kind of get out from underneath his wing and go do my own thing at North Dakota State. But it was really just very fortunate to have a guy like Jack in my corner.
So this is a question that I like to ask ADs because it gives me a great insight on them. So coaches, every day, coaches, they deal with their players, and we get gratification as coaches when we see that player all of a sudden the light bulb, it goes off. Sometimes it happens on the field, sometimes it happens off the field, but the light bulb goes off for a player. So I ask you, as an administrator, as an AD, what is your thrill? What is your game day? What is that thing for you in your role that provides you that thrill?
Yeah, it's kind of a couple of things. Obviously, I come to work every day, and I'm very fortunate. We're very fortunate, Van, you and I, to be around young people and people that are focused and have a lot of drive, and so it's kind of twofold. Mine is I get to see student athletes come in as young, scared freshmen and ultimately grow into mature adults and struggle through, wins and losses, or not struggle through wins, but struggle through losses, and then see the enjoyment of wins and, see them become that, just like you as a coach, see them, that light bulb go on. All of a sudden you see a kid who's just struggling. All of a sudden, next, they're starting and they're becoming all conference, and then, whatever, if they get to the next level. And so I really get a joy out of watching our young people grow throughout the process from that young freshman into the mature senior that eventually graduates and either goes on in a career. And I've been very fortunate that we've been able to stay in touch with a lot of former athletes. And then that relationship beyond is really something I enjoy probably as much as anything. And then same way for staff, to see young staff that, now I'm kind of on the back nine of my career, to see young people come in and like me, that were hungry and that will just, do whatever they can to move ahead. And how can I do, what can I do more? And to see that enthusiasm, and I can, okay, that person right there, I can really want to help. And then probably the biggest honor or really kind of thrill is when I see those individuals who work for me continue to move up and ultimately become an AD or senior associate AD or running a department or whatever the case may be. And they were maybe one-time interns for me. That's you can't get any better. It's almost like a parent watching their kids grow up in a lot of ways.
Right. So you talked about the back nine. So you just left the clubhouse and you're rolling to the back nine.
Yeah, it's exactly. I'm not on hole 18 yet. I still got a lot of holes left.
I got it. So I really don't even, the word 20, I don't even like to use it anymore, but 2020, 2020, it was across our country was a rough year. Here at Kansas State, we had our adversity in 2020. We're talking about COVID. We're talking about social injustice issues. How did 2020 make you a better leader moving forward?
Well, that's a great question. I think probably the biggest thing for me was, staying calm under really some adverse conditions. And I felt if I stayed calm, then maybe our staff wouldn't be in a panic mode. As maybe if I were running around with my hair on fire, that doesn't bode well. And probably the other thing is just patience. And, I've learned patience over the years, and that's probably what I wasn't real great at when I first started in this business. But I really had to take a step back and learn to take a deep breath and say, okay, we can get through this. The social injustice stuff, it hit harder than probably anything I've ever been a part of, because it became more personal, not to me, but to people I knew and the people that I had a lot of respect for. That, I'd been through diversity training, and diversity's always been a priority for me wherever I was. In North Dakota State, Van, we weren't the most diverse community in the world, and yet our athletic population was probably the most diverse population on campus. And we didn't have a lot of diversity in our staff, and we got better, as we went along there. But what I saw this time was just the raw hurt and emotion and fear of people, not just our young people, but our adults, that, for the first time, it really hit home to me. I'm like, wow, we got to do a lot more than what we've been doing. And to hear some of the stories of individuals that I have a great deal of care for really set me back a little bit. Not that I didn't think that existed and that they that they personally had those issues, but to hear them with such raw emotion, and we got a lot of work to do. But it made me learn that you got to open your ears there a lot more, dude, and get better at a lot of things. But I think the patience and just the trying to stay calm in something that we'd never faced before was probably the biggest thing.
Well, you don't realize it, but, well, you may realize it. As the leader, everyone's watching you. And so as I watched you in those moments, this is what I would say you don't realize, because you didn't mention it. But one thing that you did as a leader is that you were present. And in the moment of unsteadiness, you did a great job of communicating. And at the moment of from COVID to the issues we had, you did a great job of being out front, which I think is something that, again, everyone's watching, because no one wants to stand up and be out front during those stressful moments.
Right.
But you were, and so that's something I can appreciate. I'll also tell another story about your commitment to diversity. I remember when and I've told this story before, and you've heard it before, when I was walking out of the door at North Dakota State going to take another job, you called me in, and we talked about the commitment that you wanted to make to being a more diverse athletic staff. And I walked out of the door, but I looked back later, and I saw that you had done what you and I talked about. And I was really impressed, and again, took that as a great point of your leadership. And so, again, as we're here at Kansas State, I continue to see that. Of course, like you said, we have a lot of work to do. People don't realize, but I always say it, I believe it, that in diversity, there's strength. And I'm not talking about race, right?
Yeah.
In diversity, when you view things with a broad spectrum, there's strength in that, right? There's strength when you have a diverse set of views in any project that you're about to embark upon.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So when we've had a lot of guests on, and they've talked about some great leaders that they've had over the course of their careers. And so I'll pose that same question to you. Along your path, who are, and if you have more than one, but who has been the best leader that you've been around, and what things did they put into your hat that you've carried with you throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it starts with my parents, my dad and my mom. My dad was a coach and a high school counselor and teacher. My mom was a nurse. And, I remember I was around my dad's practices a ton from as long as I can remember. I used to go he was a high school coach, and I used to go on the bus trips with him. And I remember how he treated his players and those that everybody, whether it was a janitor in the building or the principal, the superintendent, he treated them all with a ton of respect and a lot of care. And I just learned, I just see around it all the time. You just think that's the way it should be. I mean, he was a coach. He got on kids. Don't get me wrong. He coached them hard. But, and then my mother being a nurse, obviously her care for people and how she treated people. As I got into the work world and I mentioned Jack Lingle, I learned a lot from Jack at Navy in a lot of ways. But I was also very fortunate to be around some incredible leaders at a high level that not so much that I worked for directly, but I was able to watch them from a distance. The superintendents and the commandants that ran the academy were 3-star generals, 4-star generals or colonels, and then some of the things they dealt with while I was there, and their ability to, like you said, be present and be out front in those really, excuse me, in those really difficult times. And there were some difficult times in my 15 years there, whether it was with the midshipmen or whatever, but their ability to guide through that, watching it from a distance was incredible, to kind of sit back and go, okay, if I'm ever in that situation. So Admiral Marriott was the one who comes to mind. when I was first there. He was the first superintendent, and I got to know him actually pretty well. Not only while he was there, I was just, like I said, I was administrative assistant, but he was just really friendly to everybody, and I was able to get to know him on trips, and his ability to manage people and manage situations was something I'm like, boy, if I could ever be half as good as he is in the situations that he faced. And then in the years after he retired, I got to know him pretty well and just picked his brain on things. And he's a guy that really, to me, and then, as I got through the business, you have a lot of people that you run into, whether it's coaches. And, I thought I knew a lot leaving North Dakota State, and felt pretty good about me as the director of athletics and ability to lead. And when I got to Iowa and worked under Gary Barta, I really learned a different approach that I probably didn't have. And again, a lot of it had to do with his calmness and his strength and how he dealt with situations, the way he really thought through and kind of worked through situations. I learned a lot from Gary as well. So I would say those off the top of my head are people that had a big influence on me.
Right. Oh, good insight. So over the course of your career, you've had to add people. You've had to get people on your bus. When you're hiring a new coach or a new staff member, how do you identify who will be a part of your staff, either coach or your staff?
Sure. Just it kind of a lot depends on the situation, obviously. Culture and fit, we talk about that a lot. I think there's, that's an incredible piece of what we do. And you as a coach know that when you're recruiting an athlete, are they going to fit? Not so much, you can teach them as a coach to play a certain defense, but how are they going to fit within the culture of your team? Are they going to add to it? Are they going to subtract to it? Are they going to make it stronger? And I think that's a big part of things that I look for whether it was at North Dakota State, and everybody's got a different culture and a different feel. Although I will tell you that North Dakota State and Kansas State are very similar in a lot of ways, which is one of the reasons that I was so attracted to this job. Obviously you look at the hard things, the resume and the experience and all that stuff. But at some point it comes down to, do they have the energy and drive and willingness to do what it takes, whether it's a new position maybe, or maybe it's a coach that's got to turn a program around, or maybe it's a coach that's got to sustain a program that's always been successful. Do they have that ability to really understand that? How are they going to be within our department? If it's an individual that, I see that it's going to take a lot of work for a particular position to really get it going. Do they come across in an interview that I feel that they can really be that person it's going to be hard, and you can ask the right questions and you can kind of get a sense of people. But I really, it a lot of times just comes down to a feel when you're having that one-on-one conversation with an individual. You have, your top 2 or 3 candidates, and, you just, after you go through it and you're talking to them and you're answering questions, eventually one of them just kind of, okay, this is the person.
Right.
And you may not have you may have a lot of reasons, but it just at some point comes down to, okay, I really feel good about this person. But a lot of things you talked about is leadership, their ability to talk to people, their ability to, to fit and be a part of a culture and either bring strength to that culture or maybe even take it to the next level.
And now we've had athletic directors come on and talk about because you talk about culture, you talk about leadership, and they've talked about how they have a certain coach, and the culture that he is building in his program is such a strong, positive culture that it overtakes the athletic department, and it even filters into what's going on at the university as a whole. And so I think that's important. It can't be understated at all how important culture and leadership and the personality of that coach is a part of it all.
Very much so.
So when you talk about your staff, right, and talk about you and your style of leadership, how would your staff describe you as a leader? You don't have to be truthful.
That's a great question. I hope, the things that come to their mind are fair, consistent, approachable. Someone that doesn't, I would feel awful that I would hope that there's not a person in this department, and I get, like you said, you call it the principal's office, but I hope there's not a person in this department that doesn't feel comfortable coming in and saying, "Hey, Gene, how's it going?" Fair, consistent, approachable, somebody that is patient, that's willing to listen. I hope that, I don't know, I studied management in college, and there was certain, style, autocratic and democratic and authoritarian. And, I guess I'm a blend of all of those, kind of depending on the situation. And I've never really thought I was a dictator type, but I mean, there's times that you have to kind of take charge, and have to make decisions and not surround yourself with, you have to be the one saying, "Nope, this is what we're doing." And then there's times you need a lot of feedback, and you need people to, and maybe the answer, or what you want to do, but you go, "You know what? I really need some more input on this." And that's the other thing. I hope people feel that when we make major decisions, that they feel that they have had a voice to say yes. Ultimately, they know maybe I have the ultimate decision, but if they walk out of there feeling, "Yeah, we had input, we were able to, say our piece to Gene, and he took it." And, to me, I think that's the biggest thing is, sometimes you can't be on an island, in my opinion. To be a good leader, you really need to surround yourself with good people. You need to trust them, and you need to let them do their job, to set the expectation and the standard, but you got to let them do their job and not be a micromanager. But at the same time, there may be a time where there's a situation where you gather your leaders together and say, "Nope, thank you very much, but we're going to do this way." And, I hope it works. I think about the Division I thing that we made. We moved from Division II to Division I. That was an unbelievable effort by a lot of people that, I was the ultimate one that stood up there with the president that said, "Hey, we're going." But there were so many people that had input that, if I would have come in on my own and say, "Hey, we're going to Division," it probably never would have worked.
Right.
But the fact that a lot of people were part of that process helped support it, even through what, as was a very challenging effort to go from D2 to D1.
Yes, which I think as I operate in my role as assistant head coach, and am able to see many of the things that Coach Kleiman as a head coach that he operates with. As an assistant coach, you worry about your position group, and you don't have to worry about anyone else. Well, as he operates as a head coach and you as an athletic director, I see the importance of making sure that there's groups all over the department that you have to deal with. For him, there's position groups throughout our program that is they are much more important than the cornerback group, or the linebacker group or the running back group, because each of those respective coaches, that's the only thing in their worlds. And so I do now really appreciate that.
Van, one of the things that I was thinking about when you asked me that question earlier, somebody gave me an idea, years ago, and they said, "Gene, as you kind of go through the career, every time something happens, you write down what you liked about it or what you didn't like about it. Whether it's somebody that you work with, your boss, maybe another person, and you just make a list, one or two things. This event happened, he did this or she did this, and I like that, or no, I really didn't like that." And so when I got to North Dakota State, I literally had this long list of things that I liked about how Jack operated and things I didn't like. And I said, well, if I'm going to be an AD, boy, these are some things I really want to try to emulate. And these are some things I'm probably not going to do. So I think that's, as you are around a lot of people and you watch people, I think that's a nice, it worked for me. A nice little trick. Say, I remember that, and just quickly write it down and refer back to it at some point.
Right. Well, again, I knew this would be a different deal. especially since I can hear you talking. You know, we're right down the hall from each other. It feels like. But I appreciate your time, Gene, and I definitely have appreciated over the years working with you, and I look forward to many more years. Since you're at the back nine, right? We got a lot more time together.
Yeah, a lot more time.
And so
Well, thanks, Van. I appreciate having me on. I feel honored. Like I said, your guests have been pretty impressive, and been fortunate to work with you, and look forward to a lot of it. And you've got a very, very bright future ahead of you, and happy to. I hope it happens here for a long time, but you just wish you the best, because I think your impact on young people is a lot more than on the football field, and I can see that in a lot of ways.